Now join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. How are you all doing? Good. What brings you here? Healing. This is a very loaded question, but from what? Keep it brief. Who said healing? Oh, you did. I was looking at you. Sorry. Healing without all the, it's only an hour class, so without all the details. Healing from 3 words.
Healing, recovery, drugs and alcohol.
Recovery, drugs, and alcohol. That'll do it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Glad you're here. What else? Why show up here? Came to breathe. Came to breathe. A little bit easier here, huh? Yeah. Love. Yeah. Peace. This path can be difficult. Days can be difficult. Life can be difficult. A lot of times to do things that make choices that don't always turn out so well, and we struggle. So this practice is a lot about figuring out how to make wiser, healthier choices going forward. It's very easy to get stuck in past routines, past patterns, habits, behaviors. So there's 2 wings to Buddhist teachings: wisdom and compassion. And practicing both of them is incredibly difficult. It's very easy to be angry at people for their actions. Anyone here ever get angry at people for their actions? Right? And a big part of this practice is to recognize that when they do things that make you upset, that hurt you, that harm you, within reason, of course, physical abuse, remove yourself from that situation. But talking more about just kind of everyday, day-to-day type stuff that isn't so traumatic. But when people do things that harm you, in all likelihood, it has nothing to do with you. It's them expressing their anger, their frustration, their sadness, their challenges, their difficulties, their traumas, really their pain that they've carried throughout their life. And in those moments, they don't know how to act and how to respond in ways that are healthy. So they do things that we then view as attacking us. We take it very personally. So, not that I claim to know what ultimate wisdom and compassion is, but in a situation like this, to me, wisdom would be understanding what I just said, that what they're doing is coming from their pain and their suffering. Doesn't make it right, doesn't excuse it, doesn't make it okay, but the wisdom is to understand that that's them expressing their pain and their suffering. And then the compassion is to replace the anger that you have towards them for what they've just done with compassion and learning to understand who and how they are and why they are that way. These things are really difficult to do live in person. Logically, does that make sense? Now, how easy is that to do when someone's pissing you off and screaming at you? And then it's just a whole different world. So the first part is to just philosophically and intellectually understand that. And then the next step is to begin to practice that. And that's really difficult because we often want to default into blaming them for how they're being. And again, it doesn't mean what they've done is right or okay. They probably have work to do to not repeat the same patterns and behaviors. But our role in that is to have compassion for the actions that they have taken. And if we begin to do that, even just a little bit, relationships can change drastically. But that requires us, as the individual who's being harmed, to open up a little bit. So, wisdom and compassion. All right, so we'll start with a little meditation practice. To those joining virtually, thanks for being here. Feel free as you are to say hello. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. For those who are joining or sitting here for the first time, a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often slide to the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands are on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you're on a bench or a chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with in this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, and began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from, or what you believe in, or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. you react. More stuff happens, more reactions, that's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy, not necessarily fun. It's not an escape. It is direct perception into the present moment. And very often the present moment is incredibly difficult. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it is a practice. It takes time. It's not a 6-week course. It's not a 3-month thing that all of a sudden you're going to be healed. It's not therapy. Therapy is important. If you're in it, please stay in it. Do not abandon it. But this is different. They complement each other very well. But this is just a practice, day in and day out, of becoming aware of everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do. And it's not anything that you conquer or win or become the best at. It's just a way of life. The only thing I wanted to add to what I said at the beginning, and then we'll open up to questions, is that very often in those situations where you have an interaction with someone and they're acting out of their own anger and frustration and trauma, as I talked about, and you're attempting with wisdom to see where their pain is coming from, and you're attempting to practice compassion by understanding where they're coming from. And then this often leaves us in a situation where what happens is these individuals that are expressing the anger, the frustration, whatever it might be, and that we're responding to, then when that moment settles, then those individuals have tremendous amount of shame and guilt. And then that just repeats the cycle. They do things that aren't kind or gentle. We get angry. We express our anger. The moment settles. They have shame. They have guilt. That never gets resolved. And it just repeats. And so part of that process, part of that healing, is to understand that what they've done, as I said earlier, isn't okay. It's not kind. It's not gentle, or whatever it might be. But in our practice of compassion towards them, it also helps if in some way there can be an expression of helping them understand that they don't need to feel shame and guilt for what they've done. They should take accountability and own it and stop doing it. But the cycle of anger, trying to forgive them carrying the shame, it just stays inside and comes out in more anger. So the wisdom and compassion side says for the individual who's being harmed is to at least in some way express to that person that the shame and guilt they carry, try to liberate them from that. Because if they don't let go of that shame and guilt, there will be no moving forward. It'll just come out in other ways. So this is a situation that I've seen 1,000 times. It's always the exact same situation. So with that, I'll just pause. And for me, I really just prefer to respond to questions. That was quick. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you support that process without coming off as controlling or trying to change or trying to manipulate or trying to?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you support that process without coming off like controlling or trying to change or trying to manipulate? It's very difficult because in reality, in the process of, it's funny, even looking at the language, right? The words you chose, the words that you chose. So how do you support? Great, want to show support. Without controlling, we don't want to control, right? But we do want them to change. And the word manipulate, that word is often seen in a negative way, but manipulate can also mean just alter. So you are trying to alter them. You are trying to change them, but you can't do it. And this is where the control piece has to fall away, in the sense that letting them know that you love them, letting them know that you care about them, letting them know that you support them, but also letting them know that they have to do the work. That's all you can do. And the control part, you want to try not to go into it with any attempt to control them. Because as we try to control other people, how well does that work out? It doesn't. We have a hard enough time controlling what we think, say, and do, and yet now we're trying to control other people. So a lot of it is communication, truly. Expressing the love, the compassion, the support, but also letting them know that, hey, you can't do it for them. And I think really the control piece is just an illusion anyways. It's just your mind thinking you're controlling them or thinking you want to control them. But, it's like, I have no idea why this metaphor just went through my head. I've never had this metaphor, but as it's going through my head now, it's kind of funny, and I don't know if it's going to work. But it's like you got a remote control in your hand, and you're driving like a little remote control car, right? And you think you're controlling the car, but your remote has no batteries. So there you are thinking, I don't know, it's kind of funny to me. I mean, I used the same shit for 15 years. This one I'd never thought of before, so I have no idea why this popped into my head. But you're like trying to control something, and you think you're controlling it. You got the remote, there's the car, but you're not even moving it. You're just fooling yourself in thinking that you're controlling them. You want to control it, but you can't. It doesn't work. So we don't even want to try. Don't even pick up the remote. Just express, communicate. I love you. I support you. I'm here for you. But you got to do it. Yeah. I don't know if that's helpful at all. Yeah, please.
Just based on that controlling factor. So you said that they have to come to change themselves. So do you offer suggestion, or you let themselves to come up with their suggestion and change?
I think I don't know that there's a right answer to that. And there's also a million different scenarios and a million different people and personalities. So I think both can be okay. You can offer support, you can offer suggestions, ideas. Here's what you could do. Some people, they won't respond well to that, right? I had an old boss when I first started in kind of the corporate world 20-something years ago, and we used to say that, we could have a great idea, but it had to come from him. So somehow we had to feed him the idea so he could come up with it and then feel like he gave the idea. And we're like, oh, that's a great idea. Right? Because if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z, we don't always let that, kind of feels like we're being attacked. You know, it's like, yeah, I don't know, I was going to give another stupid metaphor that just popped into my head, but it's like leaving a menu on the counter of something you really want to eat. You know, you really want pizza, but you don't want to bring it up, so you just leave like a pizza menu on the counter and hope somebody sees it and orders pizza. It just depends. If they're willing to hear suggestions from you, great. If not, if that triggers them, which it may, you can just say, hey, look, if you want help, if you want suggestions, I'm happy to do the research for you. I'm happy to help you find support or whatever it is. But if you want to do it on your own, then I'll leave you alone. So again, I think the communication, the openness is important. Yeah.
So there's in reference to what you're saying about the communication and the compassion and sharing that with individuals and letting them have their path. How do you share that with little kids? Like, I know that compassion and all that is great, but you know, it's not a control thing. But at what point do you not let go of it? You know,
Sure.
I mean,
How little are we talking about?
I'm talking 8 years old.
Yeah, 8 years old, you're in control. Or you have the illusion of being in control, right? I mean, 8 years old, I don't suggest you just allow 8-year-olds to, be on their own to make their decisions freely. But I think there's a balance there where you want to try, if at all possible, to allow any child to grow up with the feeling that they can come to decisions on their own, right? If you're just making every single choice for them their whole lives, the next thing you know, they're 18, they're out the door, and they've never made one decision on their own, and they felt like every decision they've made is wrong, then that's not going to be healthy either, So I think there's a shorter, kind of a smaller window there where you probably don't want 8-year-olds running around making too many decisions on their own. And with that, maybe it's you can do this with adults too, because we're all just big 8-year-olds, of kind of, sitting down with a child and saying, hey, let's figure this out together. What do you think? They come up with an idea and you're thinking like, that's a stupid idea. You don't say that to an 8-year-old, but you're thinking, no, that's never going to work. So, well, how about this? Or how about that? And let them kind of have some input. Maybe throw out a terrible idea and they say, yeah, that's terrible. And you're like, yeah, that's a terrible idea. So then you've kind of owned also having a terrible idea. So again, I think it just comes down to communication, but obviously you're going to communicate with a 30-year-old differently than an 8-year-old. Yeah. What else? Thoughts, questions? Yep.
So, I guess for me, I'm in the process of forgiveness, and I'm currently trying to forgive my mom.
Mm.
And she's a single mom, raised 2 kids, and she said some really, really hurtful things. I was kind of pushed to the side. So
Yes.
I want to forgive, but I don't know, I guess, how to handle the memories.
Understood.
Yeah,
so the question around wanting to forgive your mother, she said some hurtful things. I'm just paraphrasing for anybody who maybe in the back or virtually didn't hear it. She said some hurtful things. She's a single mom, raised 2 kids, and you really want to forgive her. These are things that you probably know, but I'm going to say them anyways as a starting point. You're not here without her. Right? You know how many years from day one you rolled around and stuff? And kicked and screamed and pooped? Who took care of that? Your mom. Right? In Buddhist teachings, there's a my master, she passed away recently, a Taiwanese Buddhist nun, and she always taught in Buddhist teachings that, without getting into the whole rebirth cycle, but, Buddhism comes from India where they believed in rebirth, reincarnation. Not the point here, but I'm just prefacing this by saying that. And she always taught that within Buddhism, that when we're reborn, we choose our mother. So there's reasons there. That karmic connection is incredibly strong. And regardless of what she said, what she did, what she didn't do, she's probably suffering a lot. Has she experienced a lot of suffering in her life?
Yeah.
So it's similar to what I talked about at the beginning, that sure, I get it. It's your mom. You're the child. You don't want to be whatever. I don't need the details, but I'm just making stuff up for a minute. Yelled at, screamed at, called names, whatever it might have been. Right. That's just an expression of her pain, her suffering, and the practice is to understand that she gave you your life. And when you screamed and yelled and pooped for 2 or 3 or 5 years, she didn't stop and say, "What's your name?"
Hamilton.
Hamilton. She didn't stop and say, "Hamilton, can you apologize for doing everything you've done before I continue to change your diaper?" She just did it. And so there's a love there that is beyond words, beyond actions, beyond expressions, regardless of how harsh it might be. Not easy to do, I get it. And I think also part of it is when it comes to loved ones, especially a parent that has done things that you feel the way you do now. And everyone's different, so I can't generalize completely about this, but I think there's often this, in this situation, there's a feeling in our heart that we carry. For example, that's my mother, she shouldn't have done that. Almost more so than if it was just some stranger or a friend or somebody like that did something equal to us. But because of who it is, it hurts that much more, right? Do you know why it hurts that much more? Why?
Well, I just kind of thought, like, why myself out of everybody? And, call me, like, derogatory names. And
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, I just existed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I tried my best.
It makes sense, but what I mean is, why did what she do hurt so much? Why did it hurt you so much?
Well, she called me
No, I didn't ask you what she called you. Why did it hurt you so much? There you go. Can you whisper that down?
Because you love her. Yes.
Right? That's why it hurt. And that same love that you feel so deeply for her is the same love you're going to find and access to forgive her. Don't forgive with your head, you forgive with your heart. Right? We all could die any moment. Right? The anger that you have towards her right now, you don't want to carry. Right? So, this class will be done in about 10, 12 minutes. Do you talk to your mom consistently, typically?
recently.
Recently?
I actually apologized because I'm an addict.
Yeah.
And so I apologized on my part for the mistakes that I did and apologized for scaring her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's helping me out. So it's like part of the process.
Yeah.
And I'm starting with that moment, and I want to keep going from there.
Yeah. So there's some rockiness going on in the relationship and some healing. And it would be a good time. Does she know you're angry at her? No. It might be a good time to call her and say, hey, I'm really angry at you for what you said or what you did. And I want you to know I forgive you. And you're not forgiving her for her. You're forgiving her for you. Right? So.
And tell her you love her.
There you go. Yeah. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the longer you carry that, the longer you're destroyed. So. Yeah. Let me know how it goes.
Cool.
Yeah. What else? Thoughts, questions?
I have a question. Is there a difference between being smart and being intelligent?
So the question, is there a difference between being smart and being intelligent? You're funny because, in the 2 weeks that you've asked questions, you kind of hammer into certain words, which is great. But the challenge is that it really depends on how one defines smart, how one defines intelligent. And, for example, Buddhist
I've
teachings.
been thinking a lot about wisdom, and that's one of the topics of today.
Yes.
Like I perceive certain people as being wise, and they don't take that compliment very well. They say that I'm not wise, and because of their actions, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think that regardless of what they think of themselves, if you think they have wisdom, then great. When I look at wisdom from Buddhist teachings, very specifically, second noble truth, first noble truth is life is filled with suffering. We suffer a lot. Doesn't mean all life sucks. It just means we're going to struggle. Discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, pain. We experience this on a day-to-day basis, from severe to simple things like your latte being made the wrong way. And we overcome this. The suffering is caused by greed, anger, and ignorance. We overcome greed with generosity. We overcome anger with compassion. We overcome ignorance with wisdom. So specifically looking at very fundamental technical Buddhist teachings, ignorance is a cause of suffering. Wisdom is how we overcome it. My understanding, first and foremost, always on the Buddhist teachings around wisdom, is he asked Subhuti, one of his disciples, to give a discourse on wisdom. Subhuti sat down and said absolutely nothing to the Sangha, and the Buddha praised him and said, good job. Right? So I don't, as a practitioner, try to define what is ultimate wisdom. I don't try to define what is smart, what is intelligence. None of that stuff means anything to me. What means something to me from a practice standpoint is, if we're using wisdom to overcome ignorance, I know when I'm being ignorant. Now, ignorance is ignoring the true nature of reality, meaning we're lost in our own story. We're lost in our own head of how we think the world should be. And if we can recognize that and be stuck there less.
So would that mean that wanting to fix a situation is ignorance? Like if you see someone who's crying and kind of broken, or seem to be,
So trying to fix,
or trying to
I
think
understand.
of something to make them feel better.
I understand. So your question is, if you see somebody who's crying, and is it wise to try to fix that?
Like my brain tells me to give them space and time, but my heart tells me to do something about it.
And my response is, you don't know what's best.
I don't.
So there is no simple answer to any of these questions you ask. What I can tell you is that over time, the more you practice, you begin to understand that there's no, if someone is hurting, of course, we want to help them. In our effort to help them, we may hurt them more. We don't know. So we don't know. It's similar to the response to the question earlier, that we may think we're helping them, but maybe we're just enabling them. We don't know the answer. Wisdom at the very beginning says, accept and embrace the fact that you don't know what's best for somebody else. They have to know. You thinking you know what's best for somebody else is meaningless. They have to know what's best for them, and they have to do it. And this is where you let go of control. I'm not suggesting that you ignore someone who's crying and broken and you're trying to, give them a hug and make them feel better. But telling them what to do, you have to be very careful with that. Wisdom says we don't know what's best. We are unenlightened, ignorant fools ourselves. Right? I mean, I always say this, sharing the Dharma is a perfect example. Like, I sit up here doing my best to share the Dharma. I could be ruining all of your lives right now. And I mean that very seriously. I mean, I kind of feel comfortable that I'm probably not. But my point is that you all actually listen to what I'm saying. And some of you might even do some of this stuff. That's a very dangerous situation for one to be in. That's a very powerful situation that you must be very careful with. So I'm talking in this situation, I've been at this a long time and I've been sharing this a long time, and I still don't even know, am I saying what is absolutely best? I don't know. And that's the truth.
So what if I think I'm being compassionate?
Stop there. You're great. I love you. I love you're here. But here's my advice to you. What's your name again? Ivan. Same thing as you asked last time. My master always said, when you ask questions, don't look for answers. Change your question. So what you've done, and I am picking on you, but with love and compassion. Right? I was going to say I'm not picking on you. Then I'm like, wait a minute. Yes, I am. What I'm saying now, since this is a totally different question, but a repeat of the series of like 6 questions you asked last time. You ask a question, and this is hopefully beneficial for everybody. You ask a question, you get a response. You immediately lock in on that, and then you change your question, and then you look for another answer. And then you lock in on that, and then you're looking for another answer. So you're jumping. Answer. What about? Spend about 6 months with the first response. Sit with that for a while. Because nobody sitting here or anywhere is going to have every single perfect answer for you. Spend some time contemplating the question before you look for the perfect answer to every single scenario, because it's not there. So I hope that's helpful.
It is, I guess.
No, you're done. That's my point. See, I just said to you again, and you're like, no, but, right? Don't be so confrontational. Learn to just sit with things for a little bit. This is a theme in your life. I've been doing this long enough. Don't be so confrontational. Don't be so argumentative. Don't be so combative. Don't be so pushy. Settle with things a little bit.
Will do.
There you go. And I'm saying this because I love you, not because I'm trying to be an ass.
That would be your green.
So, thanks. Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that he could be a very good salesperson. Yeah, very persistent. Very persistent.
So,
Anyway,
you got a career as a salesperson, you know? Go ahead.
So you said that they have to learn. They have to know what to do. Whichever the person, you mentioned the keyword, it's not up to our suggestion, whatever, that person have to know, come from themselves, right? So I'm just thinking, I'm just contemplating, the best way for them to learn, to know what they need to do, is actually sitting, right?
Yes.
So the more sitting, the more wisdom.
Yes.
But is that true or?
Yeah, I mean, bringing it back to very fundamental Buddhist practice, that the practice is to sit.
Right.
To sit and breathe. And to allow the crazy mind to settle. Right? Zen practice is a great metaphor of a vase. You have the vase, You have the sand, you have the pebble, you have the rocks, you start with clear water, you pick it up, you start shaking it. Everything's a mess. You set the vase down, all the rocks, all the sand, all the pebbles settle, you're back to clear water. Our minds are a mess all day long. And with that mess of a mind, we are trying to make decisions. And for those who are new to practice, learning to sit meaning meditation, learning to sit is critical. That mind must begin to settle. Otherwise, the crazy, racing, wandering, angry mind is making decisions. And that's dangerous. So yes, must sit. Anyone ever made a decision when they were really angry and just furious? They don't work out so well, right? You end up sitting there asking yourself, why did I make that decision? So I think of sitting really as like a, if you got a stove, and I'll kind of close with this thought. If you have a stove and you're boiling water, you take the stove off you take the pot of water off the stove for 5 seconds, you put it back on, water starts boiling immediately. Take the pot off the stove for 5 minutes, 7 minutes, then set it back down, takes longer to heat up. So we're kind of like that pot of water that's just always boiling. We're just always burning. And anything that we touch triggers us. So the meditation allows us to cool it down a little bit and then make some choices, hopefully coming from a place of greater wisdom and greater compassion. Less anger, less ignorance. So, yeah, and then we'll close.
We have a couple minutes
Go
for
ahead.
one last one.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the right timing for this question.
Sorry.
So what's a Buddhist thinking about the question, why? So why?
Why what?
Everything. So why do we exist? Why do we live? Why do we
Why does it matter?
die? Exactly, why?
No, I mean, why do you need the answer to that?
That's one thing that humanity has been wondering since.
I'm not talking about humanity, I'm asking you.
My mind wonders. My heart wonders. So,
Why?
Exactly, why? So is there a real answer to that? And maybe short answer, or is it?
So
I'm not sure if you really understand what I'm deep asking, but
I think you think too much.
sometimes I do, yeah.
And I think the
Why
thinking
does
causes
this
you.
world exist? Why do we all alive? Why are we all here?
Why not?
That's a good answer, but also the humanity for I was thinking about.
I'll close with this thought. I spent 25 years of my life incredibly depressed and miserable and angry and making lots of ignorant, harmful choices that hurt myself and others. During that entire phase of my life, which was from birth until, actually probably 30 years, I should say, I tried to figure out everything. What's the meaning of life? Why do we all exist? Why are we all here? What's it all about? Buddhist practice helped me to see that I needed to stop asking that question because there's no answer to it. Buddhist practice helped me understand that regardless of what some great philosopher or some great religious leader or some great whoever might answer to those questions, those are all just everybody's individual opinions. Hang on. So for me as a practitioner, why became completely irrelevant. What I had to focus on was, here I am.
You just gave me the exact answer I was looking for.
I know, just let me finish. Here I am. And since I'm here, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I could die tonight. I could die tomorrow. I could live for another 100 years. I'd be pretty old, but I don't know why. But since I am here, I'm going to do my best to be kind and help myself and others. And that's it. And since I started this path, I spend 0 moments asking those questions anymore. The meaning of life, all that kind of stuff, nonsense to me. The meaning of life is, here we are. in this moment. And you suffer, and you suffer, and we all suffer. So what can we do to stop suffering?
Stop thinking.
Don't stop thinking. Just stop asking questions that there are no answers to. And stop trying to figure out the meaning of life and work on loving yourself.
So it's actually not necessarily about the meaning of life.
Well, I heard meaning of life, but I'm gonna pause there. We can pick this up after. Yeah. Just learn to love yourself. That's it. Because if you can love yourself, then you'll love everybody else. That's it. That's hard enough. Every intention in your life should be there. And if our mind is spent trying to figure out these larger questions, then we're losing focus on the present moment, which is I need to have love and compassion for myself so I can have love and compassion for everybody else.
Thank you.
I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. So a few quick announcements from our Dharma Bum host Eddie before you all head out.
Hello, everybody. My name's Eddie. I'm tonight's host. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and is also posted on the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people can stay and close the latch on the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here, and we wish you well and hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks, Eddie. And tomorrow night, Bettina will start the new Wednesday class based on the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the 4 Brahma Viharas. So that'll be every Wednesday now at 7 o'clock. Thank you all.
Thank you.